I hope you guys are all surviving uh, distance learning and all of that. I've been seeing your posts, and some of them make me joyous, and some of them break my heart. Um, I'm right here with you. I'm by your side. I'm supporting you. I'm encouraging you, whether you're comfortable at home or advocating for in person services or instruction. I've got your back, and it's been tough. And I'm with you guys with a lot of it. Doing the 4 kids, distance learning schedules, along with both of us working full time, has been oftentimes comical and heartbreaking. So I'm glad that you guys can join us tonight. I have Dr. Brian and Dr. Bo here live with us as promised. You guys remember, gosh, probably a month ago now, right, Dr. Bo? I brought Jeffrey in to get adjusted. He was first just saying like, my knees are popping. And I was like, yeah, buddy, knees pop. And I got Mother of the Year when I found out that it actually wasn't his knees. When I asked him to point to it, like 2 weeks later, it was actually his hips. And I was like, Jeffrey, those are not your knees. Those are your hips. Like, wait, does it hurt? Does it, then it became this bigger thing. And so I brought him in to Dr. Pierce's office, and sure enough, like it was like locked out, and it should have been a lot more painful than what it was. But because of his sensory integration issues, he doesn't feel big pain very much. He feels little pain. Scratches and scrapes are like death, and broken bones are like a scratch or scrape. And so anyway, he got them all aligned, and we brought him back a week later just to make sure it didn't like come back out, and he was good to go. But in that week, we saw this very strange transition. Like he was regulated and collected and really focused. And I thought, this is a coincidence. So he got adjusted again. Sure enough, another week went by, and I'm like, okay, this kid is like regulated. And so we now have regular sessions, monthly sessions for Jeffrey to go in for regular adjustments. And we are seeing huge results. So we're thrilled and excited. And from that conversation and from that testimony, when I shared in the group, you all were like, wait, we want to know more. So here we are. So thank you so much, Dr. Brian and Dr. Bo, for joining us. And I know that you guys have some tools up your sleeve that I think everybody in this group could really benefit from, whether they come to you or choose another chiropractic practice, or just really just decide to dive in and research a little bit. I think that we can all benefit from this conversation. And if you guys can just, so sorry, my office line still goes through my phone here. If you guys have questions, please just put them in the comments, and Dr. Bo's monitoring it on another page, and we'll make sure that we can jump in there and answer any questions for you live. But I thought I would kickstart us with some questions. Like, first and foremost, like when I heard that you guys serve children with special needs, and not only that you serve them, of course, but you are actually passionate about the work, I wanted to know more. I haven't had time to really talk that through with you guys. So can you guys just kind of share your philosophy when it comes to supporting children with special needs, and kind of first you can introduce yourselves, but kind of then dive into your philosophy with serving children with special needs. I'd love to hear about it, and I'm sure everybody else would too.
Sure. So I'll start. So I'm Dr. Bo, or Dr. Pierce, but please call me Dr. Bo because Dr. Pierce sounds incredibly old. This is Dr. Brian, or Dr. Curtis. We have been here on the Central Coast here at Pierce Chiropractic and Sports Injury Center. I'm a second-generation chiropractor. My father started this practice 30-something years ago. I've been in practice 11 years. You're in your, what, third year now?
Yeah.
Just about your third year of practice? Yeah. As far as philosophy having to do with special needs, First off, understand that both of us are fathers, and I don't think that there is anything in the world that we wouldn't do for either of our children. I have 2 children. I have a son that's 10, a daughter that's 8. Brian has a son that's 1.
About to turn 2.
Yeah, about to turn 2, right? Yeah. Dang, is it 2 already?
Yeah.
Jesus. So, I think the thing is that there's nothing that we wouldn't do. And I think if you're a parent and you're in this group, you're in that same boat. You're literally will do anything. You'll spend any amount of money. It doesn't matter. You will stay up for 14 days straight if you can help your child. And when we came into chiropractic, at least I know when I did, and I'm sure Brian has the same philosophy, we're here to help people. Matter of fact, that's why we went to chiropractic college in the first place, is that we raised our hand and said, you know what, there's got to be something different than just the traditional realms of allopathic medicine. And it sparked something in us that literally ignited a fire in us for us to learn more. And the thing that I absolutely love about working with special needs kiddos is the fact that a lot of the times they are so cast aside in society, yet they are literally like this little bundle of amazingness, and we just need to figure out how to access them. And once we understand their special combination, their keys, their cues, the ways that they communicate, the whole world is opened up to them. And one thing that I love, especially with what we get to do with chiropractic, is we get to use natural healing methods like the chiropractic adjustment, like conversation, like diet, like exercise, like rehab things, little things that we do on the daily basis with our kids here. And it really allows them to express to us, and we can communicate. And the coolest part is that we are able to deal with parents like your guys' self who see almost the immediate changes in your child and say something's different. And we're like, yeah, we're actually being able to access them for the first time. We're at a different level. And for me, that's super, super exciting. Now, I know Brian deals with a little bit more of the younger population, because I tend to get the kiddos that are a little bit older, kind of around your son's age up to, age 15, 18, somewhere around there. Why don't you talk a little bit about kind of like your personal philosophy, and then kind of about working with like maybe some younger demographic as well?
Yeah. So I think chiropractors, we work with the spine because it's the easiest way to get into the central nervous system, right? And so when we're dealing with kids who most of these kids are not cookie cutter, right? So everybody's got their own way of understanding how the world or interacting with the world around them. And I think that's the most important part, the core of how we have to look at these challenges, right? And so what we're looking at is a balance of sympathetic versus parasympathetic tone in a lot of these kids, right? So basically, if you think of like a glass of water, where everybody has this, right? We all do. You have a glass of water, and when that glass of water fills up with enough input, then something happens, right? Things change, right? So that would be you're in nice rest, digest, and healing mode, and then when you get enough input, you get stimulated to enough, then all of a sudden your body goes into alarm mode. Oh, now things have changed, right? Now you're in fight or flight. We call that sympathetic mode, right? So the things that stimulate people are all very different, and we have to figure out which things stimulate different people, right? And we have to try to make that glass either bigger, have more capacity, or we have to try to figure out ways to let out that water so that people have a larger capacity to be able to handle all the different inputs coming into them and react to the world around them.
I think that's a really good point. And I know that a lot of special needs parents understand sensory processing disorder, but I know that we have some new parents in here that may not understand. So sensory processing disorder really is what you're describing. It's either input or output and how they respond to that, right? And that it really is connected to an overactive or underactive nervous system. And so when that nervous system is regulated, they are more baseline. But when their cup is overflowing, that's when you see behaviors. That's when you see a lot of hand flapping. That's when you see a lot of some head banging. That's when you see scratching or self-injurious behaviors. And so how do you keep that cup just full enough where they're functional, but not so overwhelmed that their cup is overflowing. And so that's where you guys come in. I mean, and so I think that not only like understanding, yeah, my kid is, you know, a, a, a sensory avoider, my kid's a sensory seeker, or my kid's both, depending on what time of day it is. And so that could really be dependent on whether or not they have an overactive or underactive nervous system. So, Dr. Brian, could you explain, like, when a child comes in, and let's say you've now identified their cup is overflowing or their cup is so empty they need input, right? So they're avoiders and they need that input, or they're seekers and they really need that input to be baseline. Whatever it is, once you've identified what that child needs, do you then prepare the parent like with tools to go home with, so that like in between their sessions with you, they can help treat the child, they can help provide some outlook or some, you know, outlet to their sensory needs? Like, do you provide tools to implement into their sensory diet? Can you kind of explain what resources you provide a parent once you've identified, oh, they really need this in their daily life?
Yeah, I mean, we strive to try to figure out what makes kids tick, right? What they respond to. Because again, it's all individualized, right? So we figure it, we work together with the parents to figure it out. And then there's different neural tracks that you can use, little tricks you can use. For example, brushing different things. A lot of it is actually reinforcement of integration of primitive reflexes, which when you're a infant, you're born with these reflexes that are pre-programmed into you, right? And these allow you to eat, sleep, and poop, because that's what babies do, right? If they're not able to do those three things, something's not right, okay? Because it's not something they learn, it reflexively happens. And what we see with a lot of kids that have difficult births is that those reflexes are absent, right? And then they manifest later into other issues. So we work really hard to see which ones are present that are supposed to be there and which ones are not present that are supposed to be there, right? So we make sure, and age appropriate as we go along. And then there's different exercises we can do once we see that one of those is missing, that we can give them to support the adjustments that we're doing. A big one with a lot of sensory kids is we know that there's a big integration between the gut and the brain, right? And so we work a lot with, for example, the cross crawl reflex, right? So going like this, right? So my knee, this motion here, a kid learning to crawl before they walk is imperative for kickstarting not only the cross patterns between the two sides of their brain, but also their gut function, which later on affects cognitive function, right? So a lot of the times we will have them just simply do a lot of exercises of crawling at home, or literally doing this with, if they're young, right? Very young, doing that with them to get those reflexes come back online in those pathways, right?
That's great.
Different things where we can brush certain areas of the body repeatedly at home to help bring these things back online.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that the more techniques that parents have, the more empowered they feel when they are supporting their children. If you have a child that's just, you know, right now with children doing distance learning, for instance, they are required to sit for long periods of time. They're required to stare at a screen for long periods of time. And that can be very overwhelming, and they can be very overstimulated by the time they're done with their day. How would you suggest a parent support a child who's just overstimulated and overwhelmed with the amount of input that they are receiving?
Yeah, there's a couple of good ways. The first way is to, if they're staring at the screen all day, let's see if we can cut out some of that blue light. That stimulates cortisol, it stimulates stress response, and it really ramps people up. For instance, if you watch a screen more than 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes before you go to bed, the blue light stimulates or ramps up your cortisol, your stress response, and it's hard to go to sleep, right? Same thing can happen when just watching a TV or watching a screen all day. So inside your devices, if it's a Mac, it's called night shift. And if it's on a PC, it's called night light. You can put on a blue light filter, and it kind of makes your screen look yellow instead of the nice cool colors that we're used to. But it blocks a lot of the light that really ramps people up. And additionally, you can try wearing blue light glasses to block some of that. But other things is sometimes you have to just, instead of blocking the input itself, you have to give it an outlet, right? Like we were talking about with that cup, giving some room for water to come out. So you have to look at what the particular kids, what's effective for the particular kids. Some kids are really into movement, for instance. It really helps. So you can give them something in their hands to constantly move, or you can have them sit on a exercise ball, for instance, instead of a chair, so that they can constantly move their hips around or bounce up and down, right? Anything that helps them stay focused and not get overwhelmed. I've even had instances where the kids were really good at listening as long as they were moving. So we had parents throw balls in the room, and the kid would run around, pick up the balls, and would learn everything that they needed to know, but they were just having trouble sitting in the chair. Other kids are really into textures and touching stuff, right? So things we've seen effective for stuff like that is either wearing a specific blanket on the skin, or even things like standing on anti-fatigue mats with bare feet, something squishy, or even like fake grass. Put down a mat for your front door, something that really stimulates those nerves in the bottom of the foot, which the two most innervated places in the human body are right here at your atlas, right, top of your neck, and the bottom of your feet, because that's where you interact with the world, right? So you can get a lot of stimulation through that way.
I have never heard of the fake grass before. That's a really good idea. You know, I told you I worked in 18 different mod severe special day classrooms, and I've never heard of the grass. We do a lot of the bouncy balls and the elastic rubber bands on the bottoms of chairs, and the theraputty in the hands, the weighted lap pads. I know pushing down on my son's shoulders really helps. And then we do therapeutic brushing, which helped potty train our son. And so that's really interesting. The fake grass, I really like that idea a lot, because I can see it working really well. So I'm going to share that idea elsewhere. I think that's a really great idea. Yeah, you're bringing up a lot of really great points.
Yeah, the other ones that we've used that are good, but can sometimes be messy, is putting the feet in water or sand.
Yeah, I mean, that kinetic sand is amazing and everybody loves it, but it is a mess for sure. I have a special need. My husband and I lead the special needs ministry at our church, and we have this big bucket of kinetic sand, and that's their very favorite thing to throw around the classroom. It's their very favorite. It's so cool when it goes flying. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think that I would like to know, like, and I think other parents would like to know, like, it sounds like you have a lot of experience working with this community. Do you have, like, on the top of your head, one really amazing success story that you've had with a child in particular that has special needs that kind of came in a really bad spot and has really just been accessing life much differently now that they've been to you?
You want to go first?
Go for it.
Okay. The best story that I can tell you is probably an unconventional story, right? Especially
we like those.
Cool.
We're very unconventional here.
I had a mother come in that was getting ready to get married. Again, her husband had unfortunately passed away, and they had a beautiful son that was 11 years old. And this mom's desire was for her child, her 11-year-old son, to walk her down the aisle.
Mm.
And this kiddo, when he came in, was bouncing off the walls, like crazy bouncing off the walls. And she was like, okay, I'm like 4 months out and I have a child with special needs. And so we did, the priming stuff even before he came in. And this is something that me and Brian talk a lot about, is that like a lot of times parents will want to bring their child right in and they want us to do all this stuff with them. And we, like, as doctors, want to step back first off and figure out if and when the child is ready to be open for that. Because a lot of times, you guys know this, like, if it's no, it's no. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it took us a couple of weeks with this child before we could even get to the point where he was comfortable to come in and for me to like even touch him. And like there was like screaming and yelling and like he was really jittery. Well, to make a long story short, the child we able to work with, it was kind of the same story as your son, where like, hey, look, he was really good for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 7 days as we got going. And the best part about it was the mom came back to us and said, Bo, not only was he able to walk me down the aisle, but we were also concerned about once he got to the stage what was going to happen, because there's a lot of people there and he's supposed to stand there next to us, and he was completely fine. And
Oh wow.
that for myself was the greatest thing. She goes, as a mom, we worry so much about our children, and then we're having this new wedding, a wedding on top of it. And she was like, I was so worried that we were going to have a meltdown literally at the altar.
Yes.
And, so I don't have any like amazing crazy stories besides like something like that, but for me that was kind of the top of the cake, so to speak, for
That's
what
so
I've seen with
cool.
my kids. How about yourself?
Yeah, that's right off the top. I'm blanking, but I do have a lot of stories about just kids not being able to eat, especially breastfeeding. You get back online, kid can eat, or the kids that were on constipated for first couple years of their life never pooped without laxative, and we were able to get them, balance them out, and
oh my gosh. So those are huge. You say that those are not like those are life changing things, right? For parents. Like, so then if you said that, let me make sure I heard you right. You just said that a child having difficulty breastfeeding, how young of a child do you work with, and explain how and why, and like what in the world do you do to a child that small that helps? I am so curious.
So for kids that young, I mean, we see them. I adjusted my own son minutes after being born.
Wow.
He was having a lot of trouble. He was born by a C-section, and when you're born by a C-section, you're pulled on, but babies are meant to be squished, right? So when you pull on those delicate structures, like if you held a baby by its head, Child Protective Services would come out and get you, right? But it's
Sure.
easier to remove a baby by pulling on their head these days. So a lot of things can happen, especially to the very vulnerable upper cervical complex with kids that have these kinds of birth traumas. And what happens is it interferes with the nerves going through there, and it makes the speed of the nerves going back and forth not the same, which causes a sensory integration issue at the base, right? So in my son, he was having a lot of trouble breathing, and so much so that they were really concerned we just sent him to the NICU. And
oh wow.
being able to check and very gently adjust him, because, well, it doesn't look the same as when you adjust an adult. It's just the kind of pressure that you put on if you were touching your own eyeball. It doesn't take.
Sure. Okay.
He was breathing normal by the time they took him upstairs to the NICU, and they couldn't find anything wrong with him, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that, but a lot of times it manifests with those lack of primitive reflexes that we were talking about earlier, right? So when we're talking about primitive reflexes, it's the rooting reflex. So if you wipe the corner of their mouth, they're supposed to turn their head, right? Right? They're supposed to have a good suck reflex. So if you put your finger in their mouth, they should suck on it so they can actually draw some milk out. Have reflexes when you turn their head, their arm comes up. You're supposed to have a startle reflex so that if they fall, they go like this, right? Protect themselves. It's all innate and inborn into the kids. And unfortunately, they're not ever really checked for in normal birth these days, or regular birth. I won't say normal, right?
Yeah, there's nothing normal about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're some of the only people that look for them, and we go down the list, make sure they're all online.
Primitive reflexes. That's
Yeah.
fascinating to me. And I wonder, Dr. Brian, do you have patients with cerebral palsy, and how, oftentimes people with CP, individuals with CP, their brain, there's a problem with the brain communicating to the muscles, right? And the brain wants so bad for you to reach for that cup, but there is a disconnect between the brain and the muscle, right? And that, to me, is more than primitive reflexes, but I feel like a lot of what they have going on may be related to that. Not to say that you can just heal it from being adjusted, but can you help somebody with CP, and what does that look like?
Yeah, well, once they got a diagnosis and they're down that road, other symptoms have manifested. So primitive reflexes are supposed to integrate and go away after changes, right? If they're still present in older kids, then that's something we need to look at too and figure out why it's not integrating. And when you see some of these problems like CP, you'll often find some of these reflexes still present because it is a nervous system issue, right? So you have to go through and figure out what's there and find out how you can best integrate it. Will you be able to do it fully? Maybe not. Maybe it's very difficult, right? But you can do a lot of work with trying to do that. And when you work with these reflexes that are either present or supposed to be there or not supposed to be there, and you get them train them back to where they're supposed to be, you can see a lot of benefits across the board with nervous system function. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's incredible how much you understand about this world, because this is conversations we typically can only have with other special needs parents and specialists, but it sounds like this is definitely your thing. Oftentimes people just don't get the level of research we as parents go into to support our children. And our son had an occupational therapy assessment not too long ago, and they had said that he was at like a kindergarten 5-year-old level for some of his muscle tone. And how did he go 11 years without somebody recognizing that, with all the specialists we had working with him since he was so young? I don't know, but once it was identified, we were like, oh, I see it, and it's like we thought we were doing everything, and still there were things that we just were like, oh my gosh, we had no idea that his core, he can't do a plank. Like, he can't do it for 1 second. It's things like that. And so the more we know about our children, the more we understand about not only their disability, but how we can support them. It empowers us. It gives us a sense of control in this kind of world of, uncontrolled settings and environments. Is there anything that like you were hoping I'd ask tonight, or that you were hoping you could share with the community that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
So I have one here because I think this is a question that everyone asks us is, Bo, what does chiropractic have to do with sensory needs? Meaning, like, how does it work? Why should I bring my son or my daughter to a chiropractor to be evaluated? And I'm not even pitching for us or for Brian or for me, just for chiropractic in general. And especially if you're new to this group and you're literally trying to like drink through a fire hose at this point, because I know one thing is that these groups of people are extremely passionate people, and they're like over resourced, like, here, Charlie, right? So, from a high level perspective, what chiropractic does, especially for the sensory need, and it's a little bit about what Brian's already talked about, is what we're trying to do is allow the body to reach something called homeostasis. Now that's a big medical term, but here's what it means. And let's take it outside of the sensory needs perspective. There was a study done about 10 or 15 years ago having to do with blood pressure. Everyone knows about high blood pressure and low blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
A study was done that said, hey, these group of people had high blood pressure and they received a chiropractic adjustment, and the chiropractic adjustment lowered their systolic blood pressure. Is chiropractic as good as a blood pressure medication? The thing is about the study that they got a little misconstrued is that the body has a homeostatic level that the body grows and is receptive, and the body is calm and understands well. It functions well. Well, if you would have taken the same group of people but have had low blood pressure, and we would have adjusted those people, guess what we would have saw? We would have actually saw a rise in blood pressure. So it's not about the fact that we can turn down the noise or we can help calm the nerves. What we're doing is we are accessing the nervous system through diagnosis, through movement, and most importantly, by delivering a chiropractic adjustments that's specific to a certain region of the body, using specific tools, specific techniques, specific amplitude and intensity. A lot of times patients will ask us, oh, how often should I bring my child? Like, it was amazing the first time, and it wasn't so great the second time, and it was incredible the third time. Like, how often do they need it? And the question that me and Brian talk about this all the time is that sometimes we don't know because your child is different.
Yeah.
You know, if you bring a normal person that, like, you know, lifts something and sprains their low back, and they're just a quote unquote normal person, we can tell you damn near day in and day out exactly what they're going to look like for the next 6 weeks. It's like clockwork. Why? Because there's something called a healing cycle that happens, right? There's a way the body heals itself. Well, with sensory kids, it's all over the map. It's up, down, left, right, forward, backwards, inside, upside down. And as we go, the most important thing is that we listen to this nervous system, and we're able to communicate to the nervous system and to deliver the specific adjustment. And if we do it correctly, then that allows the body to go back to that level of homeostasis. And what our goals are is to, number one, be able to help you as a parent diagnose what's going on with your child, give you resources like you're talking about already. And then number three, to be an advocate with you through your care of your child. Dr. Brian's the best at this. He's way better than I am, I'll be honest with you. And it's because we always view our relationships with our patients is that we are in this together. We're not the hero in the situation, right? Chiropractic's not going to come in here and save the day, so to speak. But what we can do is we can help be a guide for you along the path. And I think that's what something that every parent wants. They want to know, look, there are help playing a role, right? We all have a piece of this pie that we have to play together.
Yeah.
And communicate. And if we have open lines of communication, and you come in as a parent and say, hey, Bo, we had a really rough week. Okay, cool. Let's work on this together, right? So many times we go to doctor's offices and they like cast us aside, like, oh, just get out of here, whatever. Here's some more medication. Go see this guy. You know what I mean? Right. So what we really try to advocate for, especially Brian, like I said, he was incredible with this, is really helping you as a parent understand what's going on and help to guide the path. Because we understand that this is not a 4 to 6 week thing like a hurt low back is. This is months and years of constant integration and constant checking and constant growth. And we don't want to see a huge spike and a decline. We want to see this thing gradually increase over time. So you're bringing your child in and saying, hey, Dr. Brian, dude, he was great for like 4 or 5 weeks. This is insane how great he is. Awesome, right? And if child that's stable at a homeostatic line, everything else in their life's going to improve about it. So, you know, when people ask about it, how does chiropractic play a role? Aren't you guys just for fixing back pain? No. It's really all about the nervous system. And we have special ways, and we are taught things, just like Brian was telling you about, primitive reflexes and cross crawl patterns and rooting reflexes and all of this stuff that the normal doctor is not going to look for unless they are cued into it. Right. And being cued into it's a really big thing because most pediatricians aren't, right? They're there to, you know, measure how much does he weigh, how much does he look, look to the left or the right, up, down, all right, goodbye. You know what I mean? That's kind of their general thing. But when you find a specialist like Brian has and Dr. Samantha has, where they specialize in these things, then it's like opening your eyes to a whole new world. So I hope that kind of helps out a little bit as far as of
yeah, that's great. I mean, and I agree. I mean, like, every child is very different. That's why the saying, you've met one child with autism, you have met one child with autism. It is very much true. But I mean, and you guys are really listen to your patients. I know, like, when you had booked me for every month, and I was like, Dr. Bo, it's not enough. Like, halfway through the month, I am miserable and I can't sleep and I can't, and you were like, well, come in before then. I'm like, oh, I can do that. Oh, yeah. Can we schedule that now? Like, can I now, today? Yeah. So you guys really listen, and that's really nice. And for sure, we need a village. I mean, it takes a village to raise a child in general. It takes a massive city to raise a child with autism or any other special need. The amount of people that are in our lives, in our business, is, you can't count them. There's just so many, and they're from the time your child is very, very young, for their entire life. So have the people around you. You choose. You have the power to have the people in your village that you want in your village. And so I suggest, it doesn't have to be Dr. Bo, Dr. Brian. It doesn't have to be them. It doesn't have to be chiropractors. But what I do suggest is that you parents take control over who's in your child's life. If there's somebody that gives you a weird gut feeling, dump them. Yeah, change who it is, because I guarantee you your gut is right. And if you have this inkling in you right now that's like, you know what, I'm curious about this, give them a call. Just talk to him about it. What I did with Jeffrey is we watched videos of adjustments. I had gone to Dr. Bo a few times myself before bringing him, several times myself before bringing him. And I did to him, well, I didn't actually do it. Don't worry. Like, I wasn't cracking eggs, but I actually moved his body in the positions that I knew Dr. Bo would. And I said, he's going to put your leg over here, and he might even like put his leg on your leg, which feels so weird, right? But that's what he's going to do. And there was a lot of priming that went into place. He went in, instantly laid on the table, allowed the cracking to happen and the adjustments to happen, and he was just happy as can be. Would he be okay with anyone without priming? Absolutely not. Like, that wouldn't be okay. But some kids are not going to be okay with that in their first session, and that's okay too. But talk to your kids, do some research, and decide for yourself who you want in your village. I mean, you take that control. Dr. Brian, did you have any closing remarks?
Well, I kind of wanted to touch on that idea of homeostasis again.
Yeah.
Homeostasis is often considered this like flat line, that things aren't changing. But problem with that is, if you hold a biological system static, it dies. It has to constantly be in motion. It has to constantly be adapting. It has to constantly be changing. So what we try to focus on in achieving homeostasis is actually what homeostasis really is. And you can think of it kind of like a pendulum, always motion, right? You should be able to go back and forth between being stressed out and being happy, right? Back and forth. It's when you get stuck in that somehow and you're not able to keep on swinging, that's where the problems come in, for whatever reason. Right?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so what we focus on is increasing adaptability, right? Your ability to adapt to the ever-changing world around you. Yeah. And that looks different for every person, for sure. But again,
yes, and that's huge for our community.
Yes, you increase adaptability, you increase survival potential in a biological sense, right? So that's our whole goal. Make everybody be able to better interact with the world around them and to adapt to what's going on around them.
I like that, dude.
Yeah,
that's good.
So good. That was deep. That was
in church.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I mean.
Yeah, that was good. And that's exactly the goal, is to not only help them regulate in that moment, but to then generalize that regulation into multiple different settings, right? And so whether it's a loud setting, a dark setting, a light setting, in the car, in the house, in the doctor's, in the grocery store, whatever that setting may be, to generalize those self-regulating skills and be able to cope with various stimuli. And so if this could be a tool in your toolbox to help your child feel safe in various environments, then try it out. See if this is something for you. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to save the video in the group, and I'm sure a lot of people will chime in. Dr. Bo is in our group, so he will monitor questions in there and answer any that I didn't think of during the live. And again, call their office. Will you guys just in the comments, like, give your contact information so that they can call the office, and or in your website, and check that out as well. So thanks so much for your time and your investment into this very special but very amazing, important, and valued community.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks